The updated outlooks at the end of Week 7 in a doubleheader on Monday Night Football. Of course, we start with the team at the top, and Dubsy, that's the Baltimore Ravens. Now an updated win total of 12.5. The Ravens have won 5 consecutive games after starting in a winless 0-2 hole. And frankly, I'm not sure where that next loss on the resume is going to come based on how well this Ravens team is performing. And that really, Dubs, I guess, is the conversation for this Baltimore team. The Ravens right now, not just looking like the front runners to win the AFC North. They were a minus 250 favorite entering the end of Week 7. Not just a team we expect to contend with Kansas City atop the AFC, but maybe and legitimately they should be booked in front of KC because of all the Chiefs' offensive woes and the injuries on that side of the football, despite the, of course, perfect 6-0 start in the upper hand advantage that KC has over Baltimore. Dubs, I think there's going to be a lot of chatter this week at the end of Week 7 that it's not an Arrowhead, it's in the Charm City. The Ravens are the best team in the NFL.
Absolutely. And if we were to come up with a mock line and say, okay, Week 8, Ravens are at home taking on the champs, Kansas City Chiefs, you'd have to book the Ravens as, 1-2 point favorites. They've been fantastic. They certainly have more offensive weapons that they can lean on. This 1-2 punch that we continue to speak of, Lamar Jackson, King Henry, it really is looking unstoppable. So with that win total now sitting at 12.5 there, you'd have to be looking north of that number. I really just don't see a world in which they start to slow down. And taking a look at the AFC, a couple of teams have really underwhelmed. The Dolphins haven't stood up. Yep. The Jets and Aaron Rodgers, that's been an absolute, dismal showing from what we have seen. I guess you could say that the Buffalo Bills, they're certainly going to be that third choice there. But in terms of amongst the conference players, Kansas City Chiefs, they really haven't put a foot wrong. But if you're looking for style points, the wow factor that we usually talk about in the college football, Benny, it's the Ravens who continue to put up these dominant showings.
And, Dubs, we have seen a large change in those Super Bowl 59 odds. Kansas City, the favorite, that's where it's remained at plus 450. But the Ravens now only $1 behind, just 70 cents behind KC in the AFC Championship race. The Lions have the best price out of NFC teams at plus 750, moving a full $1 in front of the 49ers. Then it's the Bills at 11-1, the Texans at 13-1, and a ton of contenders out of the NFC that round out the top 10. So, Dubs, when we talk about Baltimore, when we talk about Kansas City, the Chiefs have covered in 5 of their 6 wins, of course undefeated to start the year. But they haven't looked overwhelming. Patrick Mahomes, 6 touchdowns to 8 interceptions, a negative TD to INT ratio, unheard of, and yet entered Monday as the MVP favorite after the Sunday slate. Now it's Lamar Jackson, a full $2 in front of Patrick Mahomes. But these are 2 guys that have won 4 of the last 6 NFL MVP awards. We wouldn't really expect the voters to say, hey, here these guys are. Once again, let's just give them the benefit of the doubt. Mahomes doesn't have the stats. Lamar Jackson does. 3 consecutive games of more than 300 total yards for the Ravens. And, Derrick Henry, also the favorite now to win Offensive Player of the Year in the NFL. The NFL's leading rusher on this 5-game win streak for Baltimore. At least 92 yards on the ground in every one. More than $130 in 4 of the 5. So we'll sing the Ravens' praises continuously, I am sure. Now let's get to the Chargers, Dubsy. They fall to an even 500 at 3-3. We expected this AFC as a conference as a whole to be a gauntlet. With the Chargers falling to even 500 at the end of 7 weeks, there's only 7 teams above 500 in the AFC as a whole, out of all 16 on this side of the league. And that does include teams like the Colts and the Broncos at 4-3. At the end of the road, Dubsy, will the Chargers end with a winning record? Might they be able to earn a playoff berth in the AFC?
I doubt it, Benny. I have not been impressed from what I have seen at this point of the season. You look at the schedule, next 3 weeks, we got the Saints, Browns, Titans. So I guess if they're trying to make a bit of a run, it's going to have to be in the next month of football. But a lot of question marks. And, not to go back to how's this Chargers team really going to play, it looks like a team that needs to lean on the run game that doesn't have a run game. You don't have a quarterback who's sitting at 100% there in Justin Herbert. We know he came into week one with that plantar fasciitis. The passing game, he's still getting it downfield, but they just cannot put up points, and that's going to be a very...
See, the Chargers have a near pick'em price, basically to make or miss the postseason. I don't think that speaks to LA as much. I think it speaks to teams like the Dolphins, off to a slow start this year, 2-4. We'll see where they are with Tua Tagovailoa, set to return hopefully this week on Sunday. Again, the Dolphins, a 3.5-point home favorite against the Cardinals. We'll discuss Arizona in just a moment. Of course, the New York Jets, favored to miss the postseason, 3 games below 500. Even those teams that are slightly above 500 right now, Indianapolis and Denver, plus money prices to make the postseason. So now let's get over to the NFC teams in action last night on Monday. We'll start with the team that won on its own home turf. That's Arizona. The Cardinals, 3-4. They've won a couple of games that maybe they were expected not to. They've not looked great in the games they were expected to potentially win or at least be competitive. I think I saw this last night on the broadcast. Kyler Murray, in his time as Arizona's starting quarterback, has failed to win back-to-back games since the 2021 season. I'll double-check that in just a moment. But, Dubs, by that standard, we should expect the Cardinals to be around 500 as they are all season long.
So that you're telling me that we got to smash the Dolphins in week 8 to his big return back there in South Beach. But for the Cardinals, they're so rocks or diamonds, and that's what you can expect with a quarterback like Kyler Murray. They're only going to go as far as he can carry them, whether it's going to be with that passing game or trying to get it downfield with the wheels. And he just has that X factor. You know, if you look at the stats that Kyler Murray puts up for the Cardinals, there's nothing that wows you. I guess maybe some of the running numbers there, but it's just the intangibles, you know, that gamer attitude, that mindset to just be able to step up in the clutch and get it done, which is why they're a tough out. They're a scary team to try and play against because you just don't know in which way they're going to try and come at you. And last night it was a well-deserved victory. You know, they just hung around. They stayed close enough, long enough in, I guess, a bit of an arm wrestle, but it's not a sustainable way to try and play football in the National Football League. If you're going against a team like the Dolphins, who, with Tua getting back in the mix, put up 28, 30 points, it's going to be really tough in trying to play against. So as a bettor, I would say the Cardinals could be the scariest team in trying to have confidence in, especially with that alarming statistic, how woeful Kyler Murray is in trying to rattle off wins back-to-back.
Confirmed. Kyler Murray has not won back-to-back starts as Arizona's starting quarterback since week 6 and 7 in the 2021 NFL season. Again, the Cards catching 3.5 points as the road underdog in South Florida on Sunday. Dubsy, a lot of the odds around the Buccaneers right now off the board. Of course, a lot of that dictated by the injuries last night to their star wideouts in Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin has spent the entirety of his NFL career in Tampa. Of course, same for Mike Evans. Godwin under contract at the end of this year. It is up. We'll see about his future with the Buccaneers moving forward. I will say this about the Bucs right now. Still plus 160 to win the NFC South. The Falcons, a slight minus money favorite. No team is really overwhelming in this division, despite everybody starting off the first 3 weeks or so looking rather promising, everybody except the Carolina Panthers, who are, of course, a one-win football team. The news that you need around the National Football League to get ready for week number 8, up next on the Early Line. So 1 week in the NFL comes to a close. Week number 7 now in the books as we near the halfway point of this NFL season. Week 8 already on the horizon. Great Thursday night football game to get started in just about 48 hours. And Dubsy's neck of the woods out in LA, the Rams will play host to the Minnesota Vikings. Before we get there, of course, as a week comes to a close in the NFL, a ton of injury news that has been finalized since the Sunday slate, and none of it is really good for the San Francisco 49ers. Test confirming yesterday that Brandon Aiyuk has suffered a season-ending knee injury. Torn ACL and MCL. He will miss the remainder of this year for San Francisco. Debo Samuel, a late scratch, Dubsy, against that Kansas City Chiefs team in the Super Bowl 58 rematch. They said he was dealing with an illness, a rather serious one. He has been hospitalized with pneumonia. He has fluid in his lungs. There is no timeline for his return at this moment. Scary situation for Debo, Christian McCaffrey unlikely to return before the Week 9 bye for San Francisco, still on injured reserve with the Achilles tendonitis. And just to add on to this laundry list, George Kittle, who has been banged up at times this year, is considered day-to-day with a foot sprain. And it's not like, Dubsy, this 49ers team has looked a part of an NFC favorite, and they're 5-2, and now this slew of injuries. They're below 500. They're 3-4, and it does not look like this is going to get better anytime in the near future for the 49ers.
No, it really doesn't. They're getting set to take on the Dallas Cowboys on deck there, and the Cowboys, it's only a matter of time before they truly wake up there. So for the 49ers, it's really not good news on any front there. I guess the only positive you would take away from that is CMC, Christian McCaffrey, could possibly back in the mix there by week 10. But if they were to drop this next one to the Cowboys and sitting there at 3-5, they're going to be playing catch up. And without all these explosive offensive weapons, it's not a knock to Brock Purdy. We're not going to call him a systems quarterback, Benny, but they really do need the pieces in place for this offense to work. So if they can get Christian McCaffrey back in the mix, you've got to question, how's he really going to be, look at first game back coming into week 10. Right. There's obviously going to be a bit of rust for a guy that you depend on for so much productivity. So for the 49ers, Shanahan, one of the smartest minds in the business, they've got to find something, some kind of spark to just try and keep that season alive until they can get a little healthier there. But Brandon Aiyuk getting set to miss the rest of the season, that's a massive blow up there in Santa Clara.
We'll see exactly about the status of Juwan Jennings as well, who missed Sunday's game for the 49ers to be that other wide receiver option. Get ready to learn the names Jacob Cowing and Ricky Pearsall, who was shot in the offseason and is the healthy wide receiver for the 49ers. Names like Ronnie Bell out of Michigan as well. And Brock Purdy has not played clean football. Dubsy, a lot of conversation, the game manager, he's just taking advantage of the system, yada, yada, yada. I think that has been largely disproven. But he threw 3 interceptions without a single touchdown pass on Sunday against KC. He's got 7 INTs this year, 5 in the last 3 games for San Francisco. That is uncharacteristic Brock Purdy football, where he has been clean and operated in this Kyle Shanahan system incredibly efficiently. As you mentioned, they do host the Cowboys, Dallas off the bye. It's Sunday Night Football, a renewal of the old NFC rivalries. Neither team enters feeling all that good about where they stand. The good news for the Cowboys, they're on the road. They're 3-3 this year, and the boys, all 3 of their wins have come from outside of the Star and away from Dallas. Now for San Francisco, a -158 playoff price. They're still the slight favorites to win the NFC West, despite Seattle having the edge right now. San Francisco does have the direct tiebreaker with that victory Thursday night, now 2 weeks ago. But Dubsy, really, when you look at the Niners, it's always been odds optimism from the odds makers. This team went fully healthy, even with the early season struggles. They're going to contend for a Super Bowl once again. They're going to win the NFC, and it's hard to knock them. The Niners have played in 4 of the previous 5 NFC championship games, but it feels like a long shot right now for San Francisco to get there. I guess the silver lining, the 49ers still the second best price in the NFC, only behind Detroit.
Yeah, things not getting easier here for Bang Bang Niner gang there. A little banged up, as you can see from that graphic. And for me, Benny, I don't know. I just feel like it's getting late early up there in Santa Clara. The longevity of playing in the NFL, trying to make that playoff push, you need good fortune on the injury side of things. They just haven't had it coming through the first 7 weeks here. So for the 49ers trying to turn things around, I just don't see it happening. And if you look at some of these numbers, these are numbers going off the 49ers from last year when they are at full health, full billing. So I think the odds makers just putting a little too much respect on Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers. I'm really not buying it. You are what your record tells us you are. They are a 3-4 team right now, and Seattle have looked a little better there. So in terms of trying to finish up top of the divvy, they're playing catch-up football, and I just don't see how they're going to make up that margin.
The 49ers, a 4.5-point favorite for Sunday night at home against Dallas. They've been booked as a favorite in every single game since the start of last year, all 20 a season ago, including Super Bowl 58 against the Chiefs. The first 7 to start this year more than likely will be by the time we end out week number 8. Tua Tagovailoa set to return to practice tomorrow for Miami and emerge off of the IR. A lot of people have speculated about Tua's football future. He is the one calling the shots. He, along with his family and the Dolphins medical staff, have determined that he is ready to go. There is hopes, Dubsy, that he will start on Sunday in South Florida as the Dolphins welcome in the Arizona Cardinals, as we have shared a few times. Miami, 3.5-point home favorite already for Sunday.
Yeah, I think that number's a little steep there. Seems like a fishy line for me. But for Tua to come back, look, 26 years of age. He's an absolute superstar in the league. We need him back in the mix. Went through, his 4th concussion in 5 years. So not good on that side of things. But we saw Tua facing the press yesterday, facing the media, and he's confident. That's what you want to see. He's not going to be second-guessing himself. And for a young quarterback, that's sort of the optimism that you'd want to see as a head coach. And especially for some of these weapons that they've put around Tua. For the Miami Dolphins, their season is on the line for a chance at winning. Snoop Huntley, he's given them a decent shot, but it has not been good enough and not up to the level here that we expect in the NFL. So Tua returns. Watch out for Miami to get hot. Maybe put together a little run.
This would be your time to buy in. The Dolphins, the worst scoring offense in the NFL. That should change with Tua. More around the NFL next. When you set expectations for something, you don't want them to fall flat because of an injury of all things. Dubs, we had all circled week number 8 in the Commanders hosting the Bears. Number 2 overall pick, offensive rookie of the year frontrunner, off to a historic start to his career. Jaden Daniels playing host to the number 1 overall pick, Caleb Williams, who has come on especially strong for Chicago the last 3 weeks. The Bears off the bye, they're ready to go. We'll see about Jaden Daniels. Dan Quinn telling the media yesterday he is dealing with a rib injury. They remain hopeful he can play on Sunday, but week to week, never a great designation. We have seen some movement in this spread. The Bears were a slight road favorite after Sunday. Now it's 2.5 in favor of Chicago. And if you want to keep it under a field goal, you got to pay the hefty price at minus 120. All of that, an indication to me, Dubs, that we might not actually see Jaden Daniels in the matchup of 1 versus 2.
Yeah, and if you're looking for the injury report, follow the numbers here. The odds maker's always the first one to adjust there. But what a matchup this would be if Jaden Daniels were to go for the Commanders. 2 young quarterbacks were just absolutely balling out in year 1. And I feel like it's been a minute, Benny, since we've had a couple of top draft picks, a couple of top quarterbacks really connect this early into their young careers. I think Jaden Daniels has been an absolute standout for the Commanders. Always had that question mark about the deep ball, the accuracy, but is absolutely shining. And for a guy like Terry McLaurin, scary Terry, he's saying, yes, thankfully, I finally found a quarterback who can get me downfield. And for King Caleb Williams and the Bears, I mean, this was the quarterback that was set up for success with so many, high-octane offensive weapons around him, if you will. So for me, 2 of the dynamites in the game, you'd love to see him squaring off. We flexed this game so we could get the primetime matchup, but obviously having that rib injury, not something you want to be working with as a young quarterback, especially in the pocket, getting a lot of pressure and expected to get even more there Sunday night. So hopefully Jaden Daniels can get set for week 8, but if not, we're going to have to wait. But certainly two of the superstars of the sport right now.
And Dubs, not only because of performances, but perhaps this injury, not just the line for week 8 in the matchup outside the nation's capital between the Commanders and the Bears, but the odds to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. Daniels at a point greater than a $2 favorite, even after week 6, still remained a hefty favorite in front of Caleb Williams, who threw for 4 touchdowns in London against Jacksonville. Now it's just minus 115. Daniels the favorite, but Caleb Williams back to even money, plus 100. An opportunity on Sunday to make a statement, more than likely against his opposing quarterback that could be Marcus Mariota, who is great for Washington in relief against the Panthers on Sunday afternoon. More quarterback news around the NFL. Brian Daboll has said, hey, Daniel Jones still our guy. We shall see how much longer that is the case. Drew Lock came in after the game was out of hand on Sunday against the Eagles. Not good news for the Raiders. Aiden O'Connell has a broken thumb on his right throwing hand. He is out for the next 4 to 6 weeks. The Raiders did add Desmond Ridder, the former Falcons quarterback, to their quarterback room. It seems as though Gardner Minshew is going to be the starter moving forward. He had 4 turnovers, Dubsy, on Sunday for the Raiders in L.A. against the Rams. It doesn't really matter if it's O'Connell, Minshew, or even Des Ridder. The Raiders are going to have a top 5 or top 10 pick in the 2025 NFL Draft. They're selecting a quarterback. I can guarantee you that now.
Yeah, not a bad class coming up as well there. So Gardner Minshew may be the gatekeeper for now, but for a couple of these teams, taking a look at their schedules and where they sit going into Week 8, I mean, it is all but done, making up the numbers there. Danny Dimes, Daniel Jones, I mean, how much longer are we going to stick with Danny Dimes at quarterback for the Giants? I guess there's 90 million guaranteed reasons why he is meant to be that guy, but it just hasn't worked out. And eventually, Benny, you're going to say, hey, it was a bad beat. I didn't have the cards at the table. It could be time to walk away. I'd say by week 10, overs, unders, and I would set the unders as this mark. Just time and time again. I try to put trust in the Giants. You know, he shows up and has a bright spot one Sunday afternoon and then completely goes missing. He makes some mistimed throws, bad decisions. And for New York, if they're trying to turn things around, this cannot be your guy to lead you into the promised land of the next 2 to 3 years. You've got to move on.
A very interesting offseason ahead for the G-Men. Of course, Joe Shane, the GM, and Brian Daboll, the head coach, were not the guys in positions of power when drafting Daniel Jones, but they did hitch their wagon to his contract extension. Wide receiver news, as we share. DK Metcalf is considered week to week with a knee injury. Also not a great designation. Jameson Williams facing a 2-game suspension for a violation of the performance-enhancing substance guidelines in the NFL.